guys, it's me, Lyman Frank Baum, the original author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. To some crazy new Wizard of Oz videos. Let's start with this one. MMD, The Wizard of Oz / Wicked, Hitasu Teleport, Alphaba, Dorothy, Glinda. Whoa, dude, this is awesome. This is better than any of the books I wrote.
The Wizard of Oz is one of those classic stories that's been made as a movie, TV show, video game over and over again by dozens of different people over the years. However, it would be safe to assume that the 1939 film by MGM will forever be the most well-remembered adaptation. Very few other iterations of the story and its characters have managed to stay in the public consciousness for that long, and when they do, it's either because they take a radically different approach, or are remembered for all the wrong reasons. Warner Brothers, who owns the rights to that iconic film, has had a monopoly on the Oz franchise, just because of how ingrained that depiction is in pop culture. And to be clear, WB only owns the rights to the film, not the books. Those are in the public domain, so anybody, if they wanted to, could make a movie based on them. However, certain aspects that were unique to the film are owned by Warner. You can look it up, a lot of it is very widely known, like the ruby slippers, or the costume design and makeup for the Wicked Witch. These copyright restrictions only help to strengthen Warner Brothers' use of the IP. Other cinematic versions of The Land of Oz have to change a lot of aspects to make sure they aren't stepping on what, to many, is the official version. And in a world where their Wizard of Oz is seen as the standard, what has Warner Brothers done? Beyond merchandise, re-releases, and the Wizard of Oz coin pusher, WB has pimped out the Oz IP, just not in any big budget theatrical movie like other companies tried to do. If you ever wondered what a sequel to the 1939 Wizard of Oz film would look like, there are multiple animated projects to choose from, done under the Warner Brothers name or officially licensed, including the Ruby Slippers, including the Green Wicked Witch, and including all the songs and other iconography that only comes from the movie. Since Wicked Part 2 is coming out, and this is something I'm very fascinated with at the moment, we're going to be taking a look at the official Wizard of Oz cartoons, starting with Dick! DiC is one of those companies with a long and complicated history. A very prolific production house in the 80s and 90s, you've most likely seen something made by them. The old Mario or Sonic cartoons, Inspector Gadget, The Real Ghostbusters, etc. Some of their shows managed to have really polished animation just because they were able to get like these anime studios to work with them. Other times, it was clear they didn't have the budget to do that, or just didn't care. So their other shows would end up really cheap. If you've seen my video, which more people should, about the All Dogs Go to Heaven cartoon, it's a similar look. Bad movement, a ton of animation errors. There's a reason you had people back then saying DiC stood for Do It Cheap, because I watched the DiC Wizard of Oz cartoon, and dude, is it a wreck. The show's intro establishes the premise. After the events of the movie, the Wicked Witch of the West is resurrected by her flying monkeys and attempts to take over Oz. Dorothy is summoned back, and with the help of her old friends, she sets off to find the wizard himself, who is aimlessly floating around in his hot air balloon. Every episode takes them to a new fantastical setting where they narrowly get him down, but the witch's magic always blows him away at the last second. In action, the premise is very much like Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, or the Mario cartoon, where each episode there'll be a new character that they have to meet, and the witch shows up as the antagonist every time with her very funny and competent flying monkey sidekick. Unlike every other thing I have to share today, this show only takes ideas from the movie, and doesn't bring in anything from the other 20 million Wizard of Oz books that exist. It was most likely a decision fueled by them not having the time or not caring enough to read the books, but I applaud them for coming up with their own fantasy settings and characters. It's nothing you couldn't find in any other animated fantasy show for kids from around this time, but none of it felt too uncreative either. All the new Oz lore they add in this is far from the worst aspect of the show. What really makes it a mediocre cartoon is how unpleasant it is to the senses. The animation is not really anything. Mostly it's the standard late 80s, early 90s outsourced slop. You get a ton of shots where the characters just look wrong, a lot of noticeable miscolored cells, or other animation errors. The most egregious one is something that happens multiple times in multiple episodes, where characters will be placed on the wrong layer, so to speak, and will phase through each other. The movement is the main issue with the look of the show, but I can't act like the character designs aren't a point against it too. The way they're stylized doesn't have a lot of appeal. They just don't look like main characters, aside from Dorothy, who literally just has Ariel from The Little Mermaid's face plastered on her. The others are all ugly in the way only a side character should be. Not a drop of main character energy between these three. The Tin Man is by far the worst. I get giving him the really pronounced metal jaw, probably based off the old illustrations from the book, but why did they give him these big scary dead eyes? What was their thought process behind that? Scarecrow, I feel like they also tried to make him look like the book, but the pronounced wrinkles he had don't translate to the show's art style. The lion might not be as unappealing, but what sauce he might have had is rendered moot by how ugly everything else in the show is. That being said, I wouldn't say the character design team behind the show didn't have any talent. You can see this shares some DNA with the real Ghostbusters, so some of the original characters look kind of fun, and I like what they do with the witch and her comic relief monkey sidekick. I don't know what they thought they were doing with Glinda, however. They redesigned her dress. Oh no! They redesigned Glinda's dress! Okay, yeah, listen to me. It looks like they redesigned her dress with all these details so they could make toys of this design, but to my knowledge, this show didn't get any dolls or figures. The design of the wizard looks like Dr. Wily from the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon, and it only makes me think of Brental Floss. Everything makes me think of Brental Floss. The voice acting is another aspect of this that's not really well done. The cast is obviously going for impressions of Judy Garland and all those other people. Most of these are fine as impressions, but it can dip into being pretty obnoxious a lot of the time. Charlie Adler is here doing the Cowardly Lion, who in the episodes I watched never shuts up. Our old friend Tress MacNeille is the witch, who's screaming every single line like Skinner's mom when the Northern Lights were in the kitchen. I hate the monkey sidekick. Hate is a strong word I prefer not to use towards things usually, but I hate this monkey. The voice is Pat Fraley, Brave Star himself, just going this stupid design, and the fact that he eats food, that's his one trait. And he's stupid. And another thing to note is they do use some of the songs from the movie. Maybe once or twice per episode they'll take one and rewrite the lyrics to apply to what's going on in the story. They're all so short that there's barely anything to comment on with these. The fact that they didn't just write original songs is another good point if you wanted to argue for the show's lack of effort. The only other thing you can go into with this is the writing. The stories and character interactions in each episode are fine, and considering the movie already had a pretty easy to follow story and character arcs, you can't complain like this is a massive downgrade of any kind. It's more the premise that leaves me scratching my head, like this funny JPEG of a monkey I found on Google Images. Off the episodes I watched, I don't think they ever explain why they specifically need to find the wizard. In the movie it was obviously because they thought he was a real wizard with powers. And here I guess it's just them being good Samaritans, but it's treated like it has the weight of the original movie's plot. I thought it was because the wizard was gonna help save Oz from the Wicked Witch, but that can't be it because they drive her out of the Emerald City in the first episode on their own. But then why does the witch care to try and track him down? Is the wizard the only thing stopping her from taking over Oz? Maybe the witch doesn't know that he's just a normal guy and thinks he will? Is it to make an example out of him? And if the witch is the one making the wizard float around in his balloon for all eternity, then why don't the gang just go up to the witch's castle and dump another bucket of water on her? In the movie they did that in an afternoon. Maybe because the witch knows they might try to come and get her, so she fortified her castle. I should not have to be making up conspiracy theories like this to try and understand the plot of this show. Anyways, for this kind of show from this time period, it's nothing special or even that unbearable, but elements of the presentation like voice acting and animation make it not worth the watch. It does have its fans, I will acknowledge that. Shout out to this Instagram account dedicated to posting animation cells and production art from it. From one rabid fan of a cheaply produced movie to TV cartoon adaptation to another, I appreciate the dedication. Starting in the 2000s, there was this weird push at Warner Brothers to put out a new Tom and Jerry movie every year, sometimes 2 times a year, like in 2005 apparently. I remember they'd put these on Cartoon Network a lot back in like 2012. For some reason, I would always catch the end of them, so I remember seeing part of the climax of this when I was younger. If you've ever seen any of the 20 million Scooby-Doo straight-to-video movies, this is a similar idea, where they all have their own gimmick and will do these crossovers. They stopped doing the Tom and Jerry ones after the the Willy Wonka crossover, and I want to guess that the bad reception to that was what made them give it up, because before that, it looked like they weren't stopping. Anyway, Tom and Jerry Meet the Wizard of Oz was released straight to DVD in 2011. Tom and Jerry are just a normal old cat and mouse on the farm helping out Dorothy and the gang, but when the tornado comes, Tom and Jerry get sent to Oz with Dorothy and Toto and must help the main characters defeat the Wicked Witch and get back home. If you've ever wanted to see a 2D remake of like 3/4 of The Wizard of Oz, this is your movie. Aside from skipping forward a bit when they first get to Oz, it runs over most of the major story beats, with Tom and Jerry there in the background. The best illustration of what this movie is the scene where Dorothy's singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and they'll just cut to Tom and Jerry trying to stab each other to death or whatever for the whole song. It's just a goofy crossover for the sake of it. Like something that would be on an episode of a TV show, which this feels like because it's barely over an hour. It's clearly not trying to do anything grand with either source material or replace the original movie in any way. I respect this because it accomplishes everything it sets out to do. And again, in under an hour. The animation budget wasn't out of this world, but for a straight-to-video thing from 2011, they clearly got some people who knew what they were doing. John Pomeroy, who worked on a lot of the Don Bluth movies, has credits on these. There's also some other Disney alumni in the credits, and a lot of carryover from like Animaniacs or Looney Tunes stuff from the 90s in terms of who animated this. The designs are very clearly inspired by that 30s, 40s Golden Age art style. Instead of Ariel, Dorothy is based off Red Hot Riding Hood, another MGM cartoon. That's another thing about these movies. Some of them are technically crossovers with all the MGM cartoons from the 40s, so they'll have cameos from like Droopy and the Big Bad Wolf and Screwy Squirrel. Fucking classic character, Screwy Squirrel. The other cartoon versions of the Wizard of Oz characters fall into that style that a lot of modern Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes adjacent stuff does, where it has elements that are meant to look old, but it's just off enough to have this element of fakery to it. Songs are literally nothing new. Voice acting's fine aside from them not having the classic Tom yell for some reason. It's very much fine for what it is. But unlike the Deke cartoon, what it is not bad. And believe it or not, this got a sequel in 2016, making this yet another official sequel to the 1939 Oz movie. It feels more like an actual movie, being closer to 90 minutes and giving more characterization to Dorothy and the others. Dorothy gets a character arc where nobody takes her seriously because she's a young girl. Over the adventure, she proves herself capable and all that. The plot actually has a few similarities to that crappy CGI Legends of Oz movie, where Uncle Henry and Annie M are at risk of getting evicted by a guy who's a parallel to the main villain, and after the whole adventure, Dorothy pulls some strings and they get to keep the farm. The villain here is the Gnome King, played by Jason Alexander. He and most of the other new side characters here are taken directly from the books. It's fun to see them reference the source material, plus there's a lot in this that's actually taken from deleted scenes from the 39 movie, clearly showing a lot of love for the original. There's even new songs, which aren't memorable by any means, but they're not bad in the way the ones from this one were, so they get a pass. The Gnome King's villain song has some great character animation, I remember. I can tell they got some of the Disney or Don Bluth people for that. Otherwise, the adventure is fun. They all get separated for a good part of it and go off on their own micro adventures. They had the restraint to keep Tom and Jerry away from each other for a good chunk of time. They really had a lot of good creative ideas. The Tom and Jerry Oz movies aren't hidden gems, but there is a lot to like. If you're really into 2D animation, I think they're worth skimming, or if you're a Tom and Jerry or Wizard of Oz completionist, I wouldn't classify these as slop in any way, because they clearly cared a lot. But if I was watching Boomerang and these came on, I would probably change the channel.
We now return to Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Boomerang? Boomerang? Remember Boomerang? I was lucky enough to grow up with both eras of this. Little wind-up toy branding and the weird modern version. Boomerang started off as a side channel to Cartoon Network that would air old Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes cartoons, but after a while there was a push to turn it into something bigger, whatever that was, including a now-defunct streaming app and wholly original shows for the network based on Warner Brothers IP. What else? Including Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. For a while, this was exclusive to the app, but the show is available online nowadays, if you know where to look. Plus, it did end up airing on TV eventually. The series follows Who Else and her friends going on adventures in Oz, saving the day, and encountering all sorts of new wild and wacky characters. Dorothy is also a princess now, I guess. I really think that was just a marketing thing they got told to put in. Just like the title of Oz shows up in the second season, but he's not a main character enough to be second second on the show's name. I bet good money that this was called something else for like all of the development, and at the very last second they made them change it for SEO purposes. You do have some new main characters here. Wilhelmina, the Wicked Witch's niece, is a creation of the show. They confirm later on that she's not the kid of the Wicked Witch of the East. I mean, that would have been interesting, but they don't go for it. She's like the main villain for the first season until the animators finish making the witch's rig and can have her walk around outside her crystal ball. They have the flying monkeys be these goofy sidekick characters. They're super generic, but I kind of love these two. The little one, Lyman, has the perfect little henchman voice, and the other one, Frank, like L. Lyman Frank Baum, is played by Steve Blum's Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. Queen Ozma is here, who was a major player in the sequel books. She, I think, is Dorothy's friend and confidant when it comes to magic. She doesn't really tag along on any of the adventures, and she and Dorothy's relationship is kind of hard to understand. I think they wanted to make her a mentor figure since Dorothy's learning how to use the ruby slippers, and that's a big recurring thing in the show. They don't even have her be Dorothy's BFF or anything like how you'd expect, since they have the same look about them. Honestly, she's just there. And the voice, folks, the voice they give her doesn't give me any other indication of what they were going for.
Ooh, all of this is so interesting. So many things to see, so much to do. No need to be so formal. And the honor is mine. I never thought I'd stand face to face with the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Play a song by day and make people dance. Play a song at night and put them in a trance.
I don't know why a main character in the show is talking like this and not some side character like one of the Munchkins or something. It's so bizarre. The rest of the Oz gang are characterized the same as the movie, just with some obvious quirks, like the Scarecrow being the smart one because he has a brain now, etc. There are some episodes where they highlight each of them and try to do more with the characters than the same sort of adventures from the movie or all these other projects. This is another instance where I feel like they really cared. There's a lot they pull from the books, including almost every single new character that shows up and the original silver slippers from the book, which were changed for the movie to be red. The tone and sense of humor hit a nice middle ground where it's not all hugs and tea parties, but at the same time doesn't dip into being mean-spirited or annoying. It's cute, has some fun fantasy hijinks, and maybe one or two jokes per episode that have some sarcastic flavor to them. If anything, I think the show's biggest negative aspect is that they tried too hard in some places. The season finales go for these really big epic stories where the ruby slippers will get stolen or something and all of Oz is under attack and all the characters have to go on their biggest adventure yet and Dorothy needs to use the slippers to shoot lasers at them and all this other crap. And these are 11-minute episodes, so each one of the specials is 4 parts. It just feels like too much for this type of kiddie show. Other than that, it's the best version of what this had to be, a tween animated Wizard of Oz cartoon for small children. I think where it's most successful is the art style. The budget obviously wasn't huge for a streaming show, but the designs are stylized enough to make the overall viewing experience better than if it had looked like, say, Be Cool Scooby-Doo. There's a great use of shapes, all the characters have really great silhouettes, the backgrounds look like there was a lot of thought put into them. Some of the storyboarding can be a lot of fun even. I think kids who are die-hard fans of the Wizard of Oz movie and books, even if you're a Wizard of Oz adult, there's a lot to like in this. It's a cute show with some nice art direction, and it's an interesting curiosity if you're a fan of the movie. The Wizard of Oz official cartoons are for sure something. In 3 different eras to push 3 different avenues of profit, Warner Brothers sold out one of the most iconic films in their library. The Wizard of Oz will always be relevant, as a classic story, and will always have new interpretations. So none of these are that groundbreaking outside their use of the WB iconography. What I mean by that is that none of them put any kind of stain on the original, or tarnish its legacy at all. These are so far removed from the movie in terms of time and cultural relevance that complaining about them would be on the same level of complaining about the Wizard of Oz coin pusher at Great Wolf Lodge. And that's all I have to say on that, G.